the Chief Elections Officer of GECOM, submitted his report to the Commission. As you're aware, that report should have two components. First of all, a tabulation of the recount data, which showed an overwhelming victory for the People's Progressive Party. And then, along with that report, he had to present, according to the order, a summary of the observation report. Note, a summary. So the report was presented, and I must say that we are not entirely surprised by the content and the conclusion of his report on as to what took place in the observation reports. We had half expected the Chief Elections Officer, and this was largely because of our experience with the Secretariat staff, which was implicit in of the elections in favor of GECOM. We are also aware that the only reason that the recount was completed, it was because of the watchful eyes of the CARICOM team and other observers, and the chair and the commission took responsibility for the recount. And that is why it was successfully brought to a conclusion, and it clearly demonstrated that the People's Progressive Party won the elections. Now, you must know that in recounting those votes, that there was an examination of each ballot paper under the UV light to authenticate the ballot papers, to see that they were issued by GECOM. And those ballot papers were scrutinized by all the parties for the stamp. And it was only after they had passed those two criteria, which would have authenticated the validity of the ballots, or the ballot papers, that the recount was done and the statements of recount drawn up. We also know that APNU, through this entire process, made a ton of false allegations. And many have been discredited already by the media, in fact, most of them. And we witnessed the fishing expedition they were going through when they were calling out like 100 names to find out how many were ticked off. And in some cases, over 100 names called out, just 2 or 3 were ticked off as having voted. So we witnessed all of this. We also were aware that APNU, knowing that the recount data proved conclusively that the PPP won the elections, and it exposed the Mingo's fraud in Region 4, that you notice Lowenfield or the Secretariat staff have totally ignored, and APNU, it's almost like pariah, like leprosy, that you can't even touch the Mingo numbers with them. They want to distance themselves totally from that fraudulent act that they were part of. So we knew that APNU had to find something else to cast doubt on the elections. And that is why they kept insisting on wait for stage 2 of the process, because they knew that their narrative of fraudulent elections would be reflected in Lowenfield's report. They knew that. And so that is why they were saying this. So As was expected, Lowenfield issued his report, and it departs radically from what he was supposed to do. So in this report, he became the judge, jury, executioner, and we've issued a party statement. And I hope that you read the party statement because it explains this at great length. But he had no role, no investigative authority, nor was he required to do this. And I don't know how you conduct an investigation and come to a conclusion and call it evidence based on, say, what Harman submitted without even contacting people. You would recall that out of the 517 names that Harman sent to the chair, we found in the first week alone, we found nearly half of those people. But none of them were contacted, etc. So Lowenfield, as was expected, tried to cast doubt. He could not do it totally, but he tried to cast doubt on the credibility of the elections. And this is what he said in the final, in the last paragraph of the reports, the summary reports for each region. He says, finally, the summation of anomalies and instances of voter impersonation identified in District 1 clearly does not appear to satisfy. Note the words, does not appear to satisfy. Now, Lowenfield is not a judge. Only a judge or a court can decide on these matters. But Lowenfield has adopted in a wholesale fashion, APNU's allegations, and now saying that these are elevated these allegations to almost evidence, and now says they do not appear to satisfy the criteria of impartiality, fairness, and compliance with the provisions of the Constitution and the ROPA. Consequently, on the basis of the votes counted and the information furnished from the recount, it cannot be ascertained that the results of District 1 meet the standard of fair and credible elections. Now, cannot be ascertained, again, is not for Lowenfield to decide. That is for a judge to decide in a petition, an elections petition. So Lowenfield has inserted doubts into the process using APNU's false allegations, and which have been discredited openly by everyone, just to create the basis for APNU to argue their case that the elections must be nullified, annulled by the Commission. Now we repeat, the Commission has no authority whatsoever to annul the elections, to void the elections. They have no such authority to do that. But APNU is hoping to use the doubts cast by Lowenfield on the results by using APNU's allegation for that purpose. This is the same Lowenfield who prepared a report based on Lowenfield's Mingo's fraudulent declaration and took it to the Commission to have them announce the winner of the elections on the basis of Mingo's fraudulent results. The same Lowenfield. And now, once again, the plot thickens. He has acted, he's come through once again for APNU AFC, the rigging cabal, by trying to cast doubts on the credibility of the elections. Now, one thing they cannot get away from, one thing that is clear, is that the recount was done, the results certified for the 10 regions, and that they show the PPP as a winner. And we were doing a recount of the ballots. That is why they get so upset when CARICOM leaders speak about a recount, that the recount of the ballots must be used to declare the winner of the elections. Anything else, allegations of fraud, etc., must be investigated, and they can present this in an election petition. And if Lowenfield wants to go as APNU's star witness in the elections petition, he's free to do so. He's free to do so, or Roxanne Myers or the others. But they cannot thwart the will of the people by subjective judgment. By subjective judgment. Imagine this guy and the cabal, the rigging cabal, but especially Lowenfield, is prepared just to satisfy his political masters, the agenda of the political masters, is prepared to say that he committed malfeasance in office. He, as a chief elections officer, did not hold credible elections. He's now throwing all the staff, over 10,000 of them, under the bus just to satisfy the narrative of his political masters, the APNU rigging cabal. And he is implicating the entire commission, including the chair, in saying that they, after the commission, because the conduct of election is under the commission, that this commission held elections that are not credible and spent $8 billion of our taxpayers' money in holding those elections, and yet they're not credible. Although the chair on March 3rd said the elections were free, fair, and credible. This is, Lowenfield is throwing everyone, the commission under the bus, the staff under the bus, his own integrity, just to satisfy the narrative of his political masters and the agenda of the political masters. I really want to know what was promised to him and the others, because there must be big promises for that to happen, for you to disregard everything that took place, including the report of every observer group that came and said CARICOM, OAS, Carter Center, the Organization of American States, Commonwealth, all the observers who visited hundreds of polling places across Guyana, they did not observe these issues of voter impersonation, etc. They all gave a fair report of election day procedure. Granger said so himself. They filed that with the U.S. government when they were saying that they won the elections, that election day procedures were perfect. And Lowenfield was going along all the time. However, now they've gotten him to do this. So the report goes to the commission, and we expect the commission to declare the results on the basis of the numbers, that these allegations can form the basis of an elections petition that APNU will file. They can take Lowenfield and the others to court to prove that, because we'd have a wonderful day in court showing their complicity with the APNU camp in rigging the elections. We'll bring back all of the Mingo's figures, and we'll see who enabled Mingo in the secretariat. And so we'll have a field day in court if that's what they want. But right now, as I said before, the commission has to declare the elections on the basis of the recount data. That they can't use the subjective judgment of Mr. Lowenfield or any others to influence the process. And it's carefully orchestrated. Last night, the president, after a long pause, appeared on TV, and he was asked about whether the elections could be annulled. And he basically was saying he would go along with anything as per normal. But this is what they've been openly advocating. And now they have some willing people, like in the form of the Secretariat, to help them, to enable this to happen. The plot is transparent to everyone. And credible people and decent people will see through it all. Lo and feel, we thought that after the recount that they would want to restore the credibility that they lost when they in the Ashmin building. We thought that they turned a corner, but we were not. We're very guarded. And therefore, this doesn't surprise us. We are hoping for that rather than thought it. We are hoping. But this shows clearly that they have no redemption, that they will stick with the rigging cabal until the very end, until a winner is declared. And we will pursue this to the end. To the end. We have been in this fight a long time, and I'm sure that people who are fighting for democracy here in this country, there is no giving up in them. And we will fight. This is just a temporary setback. The recount data showed the PPP won the elections. That has gone around the world. We have already briefed our international partners about this travesty, about the Lowenfield inserting his subjective judgment, what appears to be credible and what doesn't appear to be credible based on the news allegations. And you know that everything they've raised, look, just yesterday I saw, they said just over 500 people were ballots were rejected because they were not stamped. But it is the same APNU that was telling the 8,000, saying 8,000 members of our joint services lost their votes. They are disenfranchised because of unstamped ballots. But in their own publication, they showed about 500 odd ballots for the whole country that were unstamped and rejected. And of those 500, we in the PPP in one box, we lost 97 at Plindora here at Ogle that were unstamped in one of the boxes alone. So people, I'm sure the media will now see Mingo's report in the way that it exposes how dishonest the Secretariat staff is, and that they are prepared to sacrifice everyone and everything just to support the rigging cabal, to repeat the allegations that the media itself spent so much time on discrediting, to elevate this now to evidence and to use that to question the credibility of the elections is unthinkable. Decent people don't do that. But then looking for decency there is not something like you will find. So I just wanted to make a short statement to say that we'll continue to work with all the political parties, with civil society. The media has been playing an important role, and the international community, to ensure that the coup plotters, the riggers, do not succeed. And there's always the sanction. I know that people have not been talking about that because they think the recount went fairly smoothly, but that is always there. I spoke with a number of people, and they still hold strongly that anyone who seeks to benefit from sanction, from electoral fraud, they will face the sanctions, including Granger himself. I know of a few others who are behind the scenes, some businessmen, and we have, and many of them may have helped fund this activity, that the Secretariat staff. So we know of them too, so that if they think that they are operating in the shadows, we know who has been paying whom. And at an appropriate time, that will come out. But we are not going to give up. So I know a lot of people are disappointed, but this is a fight to the end, because you have a tiny group of people now hanging on without regard for country, without regard for people's welfare or democracy. They're just hanging on and totally dishonest. And therefore, we'll work at this and use every method possible to ensure that we, the will of the people prevail and we preserve our democracy. Thank you.